some of the things that resonated with you as potential donors?
She said pretty early on what they needed the money for and exactly what it was going to cover. It's going to cover one student's lunch, teacher, transportation, whatever.
Okay, so in case you couldn't hear, she said very early on, she said what the money was going to be used for, how much they needed, and it's going to be used for teaching, lunch, etc. Exactly. What else? Anybody else? Yes.
She painted a picture of what the situation was, what the need was.
She painted the picture of what the situation was and the need was. Excellent. Anybody else? Yes.
She started with the word imagine, and that connected with me because I thought, okay, I can imagine this.
Great. She started with the word imagine, and that helped her to connect with the need of, yes, I could imagine that.
She asked for a specific amount and broke it down into what it would be monthly.
She asked for a specific amount and broke it down into what it could be every month.
I thought she gave me the success rate to like telling how this could impact future generations because people are coming back now.
Excellent. She gave a success rate so you can see that how this is going to impact future generations. Exactly. Anybody else for Anne? Yes.
Call to action 3 times.
Call to action 3 times. All right, Anne. All right. Anybody else for Anne? Well, Anne, we're going to give you a round of applause because that was a stellar effort. Jennifer, sorry, my glasses are not that great. I should remember your name. That was my mother's name. So Jennifer, with the Humane Society, what were some of the positives that you took away or things that resonated with you?
She created a really heartwarming picture of the man who came in. She described his hat, and so you really could see envision who that person was.
Yes, she painted a picture of what the man looked like, his hat, his t-shirt, painted a picture of what he looked like so you could connect with him personally.
She thanks their staff and their volunteers for their contributions.
Yes, thanked her staff and volunteers for contributions.
She described the 2 dogs when they arrived as having frosty faces.
Yes, love it. The frosty faces is even describing the dogs, right?
She incorporated emotion so you could feel what others were feeling in the story.
Yes, incorporating emotion. You could feel what others were feeling in the story. Excellent. Anybody else?
She gave a specific amount for the preparation needed to get those dogs to adopt.
Right, she was very specific in the ask and how the process of adoption.
I like the call to the donors that you can make happy endings like this happen.
Excellent. The call to donors, you can make happy endings possible.
Her use of names helped me to connect to the individual.
Yes, use of names helped you connect to the individuals.
You can tell that she herself is really passionate about this work. Like, I felt myself tearing up over it, just seeing how happy it made her.
Ooh, you hear that one? She felt herself tearing up. That's number one way to empty wallets. Make donors cry. Yes.
I think that she segmented well. You can either be giving to help the dog or to help the man.
Exactly. She hedged her bets, right? Either you're going to relieve loneliness or save dogs' lives. Yes.
I thought her use of love connection was a powerful motivator to stick with me.
Yes, the love connection. Who could say no to that? Anybody else? All right, terrific. Let's give Jennifer a round of applause. And now David. Let's talk about David. So what resonated with you in the way David delivered his appeal?
He drew a really sharp, right away. Remember when you were a kid, so you did that, and then he started talking about sexting, and I thought, well, that's true. I guess I never really did that. Really drew a sharp definition for me about the difference between what I did when I was a kid and what the kids today are up against.
Yes, so the comment was right away he painted a picture asking you to remember your own childhood and then drew a stark contrast with what today's children are dealing with, which we couldn't even imagine donkeys years ago, right? What else for David?
There was a specific ask for a tool that you could spend, if you spent this much money, you could buy a tool that would help kids with their job search and something for their later life, that it'll improve their life.
Yes, he was very specific, asking for a specific amount and telling you exactly what it was going to do. It was going to buy a tool that helped them to learn new skills in laser engraving so that they could get good jobs. Excellent. Anybody else?
You made it really personal to me, so.
Made it personal to me. Another good way to empty wallets. Anybody else? Yes.
I did not catch his charity.
Ah, good. Because there'll be one in the envelope. The envelope will tell you where it is. But yes, you're right. He could have added in there a name of the charity just to connect the dots. But the focus is on the donor and what the donor can do for these kids. And that's the thing that we have to pass the U test. I don't know if any of you follow Tom Ahern. If you don't, you should. He is an excellent resource for donor-centric writing. But you always have to look for how many times do you say the word you. So instead of we do this, you do this, right? So it's a U test. All right, well, great job, David. And now, Renita, tell us with YWCA what resonated with you.
I like that she said, someday you're going to be 72.
Someday you're going to be 72. Some of us sooner than others, right? It's amazing how when you suddenly hit your 50s, you realize that your older generation is passing away and now you're the old generation. Okay, who's next?
That personalization of saying the YWCA saved my life.
Yes, the personalization of YWCA saved my life. Excellent.
I could envision the organization helping my family, people that I am close with.
Excellent. They could envision the organization helping somebody I love.
It was a very positive pitch, that this was a fun thing that this woman was doing with her friends, and that was supported by the YWCA.
Great. So it's a positive, feel-good story of what this woman was able to do with her friends and supported by the YWCA. Excellent.
But in addition to that, it had just like a hint of loneliness, right? This woman is 72, her friend group is dwindling, and that became really real. But it was immediately followed with, but it's not all doom and gloom. We give her a new community.
Excellent. So you paint the picture. The arc of the story is the loneliness and dwindling friend group, and hey, but we've got a solution to that through the YWCA. Excellent.
I really appreciate it was narrowed down to specific demographics, so it wasn't supporting the WYCA, it was supporting seniors in their communities who could establish their best years ahead.
Excellent. So they doubled down on one demographic, not their whole program, and they made it personal. Excellent. Anybody else?
We broke down the dollar value to like $30 a month. This will support this initiative.
Exactly. Very specific ask and not a huge lift at $30 a month. Anybody else? Yes.
As a advancing age person, I found that Juanita's message was the easiest on my ears because I wear hearing aids and I can't hear without them, and I can't hear better with them. So enunciation, we all tend to have sloppy speech and think that everyone is going to understand us. And I can tell you, I don't. And the younger people are, the more they seem to race through conversations, and I think I'm listening to a foreign language. So being conscious of that in presentations, I think is so important, because if we're going to ask a question, I need to be able to hear it.
Absolutely. So the comment was that he appreciated Renita's diction and volume, and he was able to hear her easily. And as somebody that is a little closer to the 72 line than some others, he appreciated that because his hearing is not as far as it used to be. The same is true for your print communications. When you're sending your letters, you want to use at least a 13-point Arial font, because especially if you have older donors, they need, and people like me who wear progressive lenses, the bigger font type really makes it more readable. So knowing your audience is a big part of it. And in the back.
I appreciated the fact that she wasn't reading, and because she wasn't reading, it felt more like a conversation, and there was a little bit more of an emotional pitch as she was sharing, even mentioning how long she was in there.
Yes. So the comment is that she appreciated the fact that she wasn't reading. It it came from the heart, and it felt like more of a conversation.
I felt like her face matched her enthusiasm.
There we go, Renita, you're a movie star, you need to be. Face match enthusiasm, yes. Excellent. Any more comments? Okay, so now it's voting time. So let's see, Renita, let's you put in the order we said. Let's start Anne. How many think that Anne should win the pitch competition? Let's go by applause. All right, how about Jennifer and the Humane Society? How about David and the Brigade? And how about Anita and the YWCA? Anita, my aging years tell me you had just a little bit of an edge. But at Network for Good, we don't believe in having favorite children, so we are going to make a $100 gift to all your organizations. Thank you for being good sports, and please make sure I leave with your business card so I can make good on that promise. Thank you. They did an awesome job, didn't they? So I think you all, was that fun? Yep. Okay. Did you learn a lot? Great. So the three takeaways I took away from that. Be personal. Make it about what a donor can do for an individual. The second, be authentic. And by triggering emotions and inviting people to enter into that experience, imagine what it feels like when you paint that picture. And the third thing is a very clear call to action. So personal, authentic, and a clear call to action. And if you can use those three in every communication that you send out, you're going to become better fundraisers because people will resonate with what you're telling them. All right, now for the next part. So that was really the hard part, is the storytelling. And so as you're looking to your year-end campaigns, you right now should be thinking about who's my 72-year-old lady that I'm going to use to help paint a picture of what the donor can do for someone else. Who's my Elroy? And so when you start gathering your stories, that's the first half of the battle. The next thing is, what are you going to make possible for the donor to do? So you want to be very strategic in what you ask for. One of the hardest things to raise is unrestricted dollars. And so when I do my year-end appeals, I'll tell a story and paint a picture for a donor, but I do it in a way that doesn't lock me down into having to assign it to a particular program, right? To give you an example of what that looks like, there's a group in Florida where I live called Impact Broward, and they changed their name to South Florida Institute for the Agency on Aging or something. Anyway, I thought Impact Broward was much more potent, but they have three programs that they run. One is they place retired executives with nonprofits for a period of up to 4 months to help them free of charge. So it could be experts with strategic planning or business planning or CPA, whatever it is. Second thing they do is they provide reading buddies for kids that are struggling in school with reading. And then the third thing they do is they have mental health services for veterans suffering from PTSD. So they had a new executive director, and he took a storytelling class with me, and he says to me, Rachel, I have a problem. My development staff just sent me their letter, and I can tell from your class it's not going to work. Very institutional focus, no hint of emotion or anything. He says, could you work your magic? So I did. And the way I reworded the letter was to paint three pictures for them. One was about a little boy named Johnny, who was 5 years old and constantly getting thrown out of class. The teacher was on her last nerve, and this kid was just being sent for discipline every single day and for being disruptive. And they wanted to put him on all kinds of behavior improvement plans and things, And finally, he got matched with a reading buddy. And he and the reading buddy met for an hour every day just to read. And soon Johnny was reading on grade level, and he was no longer disruptive in class. Because the problem wasn't that Johnny had behavior issues, the problem was that Johnny couldn't read, and he didn't want anybody to know that. And so by acting out, he got thrown out of class. So I did that for each of those 3 programs, and I told a quick story about a veteran and a quick story about an executive. And so by telling 3 very quick stories that were very bare on facts but heavy on emotion, we were able to raise unrestricted dollars in one letter. Because I didn't say it's going to the reading buddies or it's going to the PTSD stuff. So the funny story is when I showed him the letter, he said, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this past my staff? Because it's so personal and so different from anything we've done. And I said to Peter, here's the good news. You're the executive director. About 3 months later, I saw him at the party, and he says, guess what? I got a funny story to tell you. My accountant walked into my office a few weeks after we sent the letter, and she says, who's Johnny? Some donor had sent a check and written for Johnny. So that's how you use storytelling and very strategic asks. We were able to illustrate for these folks how much it costs to provide a reading buddy, how much it costs to screen an executive so that they could go work for a nonprofit, and how much 1 hour of mental health counseling costs for someone suffering from PTSD. So people could choose their gift levels, and they sent their checks, and we were strategic in our asks. Each of them had different gift levels. So, the reading buddy was probably on the lower end of our costs. For $30 a month, you can provide a reading buddy. The mental health counseling was more like $100 a month. And then the placement of the executive, more like $500. And so we were able to hit donors on different levels, and by asking for those amounts strategically, we were able to raise 3 times what they raised on previous campaigns. And the next year, he didn't need my help because his development staff said, okay, we can do this. So we're remembering, back to our math again, that the lifetime value of a donor is equal to the amount they give times the number of times they give. And so you can see, just by honing your storytelling skills, that you can increase how much a donor gives. So in the corner here, when Jennifer told her story, somebody teared up, right? So I have a confession to make. I hate cats, and they love me. Something about that tail wiggling through the legs just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I like dogs as long as they belong to somebody else, and I don't have to pick up the poop. So I am not what you would call your typical donor persona for an organization like Jennifer's. That said, every time at Christmas time, we have the Humane Society comes out with this ad on TV that shows you all these, mangy dogs and they're, all these things. And I cry every time I give them money every time. So that just goes to show that if you're a really good storyteller, you will find your tribe. And it's okay if you take risks and you take a few people off because it's a numbers game, right? So it is better to be authentic to who you are and the work you're doing and risk alienating somebody who just wasn't that into you so that you can find more people that are animal lovers like Jennifer, or people that are passionate. Those are the people that are going to raise that money for you and be the ambassadors and be your $125 million mother, right? Oh, I forgot I'm in the other direction now. All right. You noticed in the thread of the appeals that we focused on monthly giving. For just X amount per month, you can do this. The reason we do this is if somebody's giving you $10 a month, that's $120 a year. If you can get them to move from $10 a month to $15 a month, they just upgraded their value by 50%. And monthly giving is the greatest way to improve your donor retention rate. And so when you can make a pivot to monthly giving and get people to give you a little bit each month and just fix it and forget it, you're going to raise a lot more money over time. So with monthly giving, if you're looking for a resource, there's a woman that is a good friend of mine called Erica Wasdorp. WAASDORP. Erica Wasdorf. She wrote a fabulous book, and it's called Monthly Giving, The Sleeping Giant. And she will help you, when you read that book, you can see how you can look through your donor database to see which donors are good prospects for becoming monthly givers. So remember on our VIP list that we mentioned earlier, I said you must sort it by donor and have the donor's name, the total they've given, and the number of gifts. The reason I asked you to look for the number of gifts that they made in a calendar year, if somebody made 3 gifts to you in a calendar year, they are prime suspects for monthly giving. They are into you. Usually you ask 3 times a year, maybe 4. So if they've given to you 3 times a year, a gift of whatever size, then they are very highly likely to respond to a monthly giving pitch. So when you do your segmentation for your year-end appeals, wouldn't it be cool if you could have a segment of people that have given you 3 gifts or more in 2017 or 2018, and instead of asking them for a single dollar amount, make it a smaller amount, but request a recurring gift. And bonus points to you if you direct them to a page, an online giving page, where the default is monthly giving, right? That's how you score those automatic upgrades. So again, the numbers game, we have to remember the name of the game in raising more money and doubling the value of your donor file is to retain more donors by getting them to give you more often or continue giving at the same frequency but giving higher amounts. Anybody have any questions so far? Are we good? All right. So another fun fact, recurring donors tend to fix it and forget it, especially if they give you those ACH debit transactions. So if your online fundraising vendor does not allow ACH debit transactions, find one that does, because people's credit cards expire, but they seldom move checking accounts. So when you have the ACH debits where the money's coming out of their checking account every year, you're going to retain a higher portion of your monthly donors and keep them giving longer because you don't have to convince them to keep giving when their credit card expires. Or you don't have to reach out to them and get them to find the time to put in their new credit card number. You get the idea. But the longer you keep them giving, the more they'll give. And typically they'll give until the credit card expires. Very few limited to just 1 year. When we look at retention rates, remember we said retention is the fastest way to increase or double your giving. The average donor retention rate, and I think this is a bit generous, is somewhere around 46%. If you have a first-time donor, usually they only retain at a rate of 23%. And that's because we are not very good at donor stewardship. So most of us don't have systems in place to welcome a new donor. So donors are kind of like dates, you know? When they give you that first gift, you gotta cultivate it to get to the second date, you know? So when do you have to welcome them? Do you have a welcome series of emails that go out, or even printed communications? So maybe 2 days after the gift, and then they get the acknowledgement, and then 3 days later, they get a welcome to the family email from your executive director that has ways that they can connect. And maybe another week later, they get a fun impact story of somebody whose life was changed because of their generosity. And a week after that, you're telling them about ways to volunteer and make friends with other cool people that are part of this awesome mission. And guess what comes in week 5? Boom! Hit them for money again. Become a monthly donor, right? So just the processes that we build into place can help us retain a higher percentage of those first-time donors. But we have to treat them differently than we do for donors that have been giving us for a long time because they don't know as much about us. Repeat donors. Repeat donors usually retain at a rate of about 60%. So these are your donors that are not on a monthly giving situation, but if every time you send an appeal, they might send you a check or donate online. But 60% is still not that great. I mean, that means 4 out of 10 of them are still not giving. So that's why monthly giving is the holy grail of sustainability, because their retention rate is 90%. And the best part is it's automatic. So I know many of you may be responsible for writing grants And you know, there's that wonderful question on every grant application. How will you sustain your program once the grant period ends? For most of us, that's an exercise in creative writing. But if you have a plan and you show them that you are acquiring X number of monthly givers each year, and you have a solid base of this many monthly donors contributing this much to your organization, do you think a grant maker is going to want to fund you? Heck yes, because they know that you are raising the money to sustain the impact that their grant is going to make possible. Remember again, only two ways to make money: increase the number of times they give to you, or increase the amount that they give. Here's another cool fact. If you look at one-time donors and compare them to your regular loyal monthly donors give an average of 5.4 times more than your first-time donors. So put another way, if you were to average all the gifts that one-time donors gave you, you could multiply it by 5.4 and that'll tell you what your monthly donors are contributing. So they're way more valuable. So when we're looking here, you can see that if you look at the national averages of donor retention of 46% for general donors versus a 90% retention rate for monthly givers or recurring givers, look at the difference in the dollar value over time. If you had a one-time donor that gave you $50,000 in 2019, by the time 2023 goes, they're down to giving you $3,500, and after that they're done. They will have given you $98,100 over the lifetime. Not too shabby. But I like the math on the right better. If your monthly donors as a group are contributing $71,000 in a year, and you treat them right and they keep giving, their 5-year value to you is $416,000. So if you don't currently have a monthly giving program, this is something you want to start working on. Of course, you have to have donors to start with. Most people don't start out as monthly givers. But look at all the organizations that have good monthly giving programs and learn from them. So humane societies are excellent at monthly giving. You know, so make some gifts. Be a secret shopper. I do that all the time too. I will make gifts to random organizations just to see what comes back to them. When I was a fundraising consultant, that's how I used to find clients. I would go make a gift on their website, see that their donor outreach stunk, and then I would have to say, you know, I'm a fundraising consultant, we can fix this. You know? All right. Another good way to help to increase donors is make sure that you're measuring how many of your donors, that your supporters give you contact information, and then look to see how many of them can you convert to monthly giving. So that's going to give you an idea of how many you have to reach a target amount. So let's say you have 100 new contacts, and you send them outreach so that they can invite them to be a donor, or a monthly donor even, and 10 of them become recurring donors. You know that if you want to score 100 monthly gifts, you got to talk to 1,000 people to make that possible. So it's just like a sales funnel. Anybody here been coming from sales? We're in the sales business. You have to have enough at the top of your funnel to drive the revenue at the bottom. So you always want to be getting contact information from folks, but you have to make sure that your communications are helping people get to know you and inspiring them to go deeper and deeper and deeper and set roots with you. That's how you're going to double your giving. So there are 3 offers that you can ask donors to do. You could ask them, hey, your gift of $120 does this. Or you could turn around and say, how about making a gift of $10 a month to do X, Y, or Z? Or you could say, a pledge of $120 feels like the right thing. Which one do you think is going to be the most reliable? The monthly giving. And here's why. As I'm thinking about it, $10 a month is not a heavy lift to me. Oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed to tell you how much I pay Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. It's a lot more than $10 a month, especially traveling as much as I do. But to an average donor, that's a no-brainer. I don't have to think about that because I'm not going to miss $10 a month. if you ask me to give you $120, now I have to think, did I pay my mortgage yet? Did I pay my health insurance? Did I pay my light bill? And, you know, when can I make this gift? Do I have to wait till I get paid again, or can I pay it now? So you see, there are all these objections that rise to the top. And so it's not only about the timing of the gift and the likelihood of getting it, we also have to look at the happiness factor. When people are excited, like our friend over here cried with the Humane Society, she's hyped on emotion right then, and it's very easy to get her to click donate right away. But when she walks out the door and she gets in that school line to pick up 3 screaming kids that are going to die nuts for the rest of the afternoon, it is totally off her radar. And so we have to tap into that happiness factor. We live in an instant gratification society, and so capitalize on it and pounce. $10 today is worth more to you than $120 promise later, right? So if you can think of your donors and speaking their language and framing it in a way that's appealing to donors, instead of telling them what you need, you really are offering them choices on what feels like it fits best for them. And people like choices, right? So if you come to me and say, well, I really need $50 to do this, I'm going to ask you, well, why do you need 50? Could you do a little 25, or do you really need 100? You know, and I start asking all these questions because that's just human nature. We like choice. And so you want to give them choices that match their income, even though you may or may not know it. Makes it mentally easier, that it's a no-brainer decision, not something they have to juggle and think about. And most of all, the third part, makes them happy.
I think there's a fourth thing I would add. Join the herd.
Join the herd? Yes, you could ask them to join the herd.
Right now, the fundraising is going on for public radio.
Yes.
They do this over and over and over and over.
Yes, public radio is excellent at this. I have to confess, I'm a big NPR listener, and I don't spend much time in my car, but when I do go in there, it's always on NPR, and I always feel so guilty that I have never taken the time to make a gift, because I have thought about doing it 100 times, and then it's out of the window. And the last time they did the pitch, they had someone say, shame your friends into making a gift, and it was people like, friends of people like me, calling the radio station to tell them about people like me, and then scoring their gift. Interesting fundraising strategy, but it does work. And so you bring up a good point. You have to tell people what they become when they become part of your family. So for monthly givers, when they sign up to be a giver every month, what do they become? You become part of a special group of friends that do X, Y, or Z every single day. You'll have the satisfaction of knowing that you're making the difference in the life of a child every single day. So you have to remind them of why it's going to give them pleasure. You know, if you think about this, think about the marketing campaigns that you respond most to. You know, what they do. I'm a quilter, and that's my guilty pleasure. You know, some women have shoes, closets full of shoes. I think I own 8 pairs of shoes, and probably wear 2 of them. But my quilting stash is probably over the limit. It needs more space in my closet than clothes. But for me, every time I go to the quilting store, you know, they have all these batiks. I love batiks. And I just can't walk past them. And you know, so I have this collection of all these quilts I'm going to make in my mind. And I don't know how much fabric I'm going to need, so I'll buy a yard of this just to be sure. But I've now put a moratorium on going to quilt stores because I need some self-control and I don't have any. But the fact is, just the act of buying the fabric makes me feel good, you know? Even going to the quilting store and sitting there with a bunch of old ladies that are a lot older than me, telling stories about their husbands and thinking, oh cool, I got rid of mine, I don't have those problems anymore. It makes me happy. That's the thing you're trying to create for your donor, right? You're trying to make sure that your donor feels good about giving. It has to not only make sense to them logically, but it has to be an emotional thing that they're connected to. So, if you want to increase the long-term value of your donors, and you want to increase the number of donors, you have to think that you are in one business only, and it's a donor happiness business. The method you use to get there is the work you do. And so, as you're cultivating board members to help you on the journey, don't ask them if they want to be part of the donor stewardship committee. Nobody's going to commit to that. It sounds like work. But ask for volunteers who want to serve on the Donor Happiness Committee, and every hand will go up. And they do exactly the same thing. All right, step number 7. We have to let donors know that we are honoring their preferences. So if you do a donor survey and you ask a donor, what form of communication do you prefer us to use when we want to share some news with you? And they tell you, I only want text, then you better be in a position to send them text. Or I only want direct mail, that's fine. For me, it has to be direct mail. My inbox is insane. And I always tell folks, if you put me on your email list and I didn't ask to be on it, I'm going to write about you or talk about you. Because it's again that boundary and preference, right? And so ask your donors, how do you like us to share news with you? Do you like a newsletter? Do you like a printed letter? Do you like a phone call? Do you like a text? Do you prefer email? And what frequency? And make sure you can create the structure of that so you can honor their preferences. All right. So I know I've done a lot of talking. We just had a break. Anybody need a break, or should we keep going? Keep going? All right. So, step number 8 is creating a monthly communications plan to keep donors informed. So what do we mean by this? My general rule of thumb is you have to have 3 touches between asks, or else donors feel like ATM machines. So what does that mean? That heartfelt thank you acknowledgement, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a personally handwritten card, whether it's a letter, that thank you and appreciation that happens within 48 hours is your first touch. The next touch you need to send is some kind of impact story. So you have to show the donor that they made a good investment in you. So that's where you tell Elroy's story. You know, Elroy is a new man these days. He's walking with a bounceless step because he's got 2 cute puppies following him around. And you know, you tell those stories because they're not only rescuing animals, they're reducing loneliness among seniors. And so the donor can feel good that, gee, even though I'm not an animal lover by any stretch of the imagination, Elroy found his longtime love. Life is good, you know? I can embrace that. And then the third touch needs to be some kind of invitation to deeper connection. It could be that you're having a come see your gift at work event, where it's an open house, where they can come in, tour your programs. Guess what? It sounds like work to put them on, and it is, but 99% of the donors you invite will never show up, and the ones that do will give you big bucks. So you always want to create opportunities for donors to come and see their gift at work. As much as we can paint a picture of a child in Haiti who is from a disadvantaged family in a country that's horrendously under-resourced, as much as we can do it in a letter or sharing a story, nothing does it like that human touch and meeting that person face to face. So I'm going to tell you about another one of our old curmudgeon donors. So I met this guy named Joe. I used to run a program called Just Faith in the Archdiocese of Miami, and it was a year-long formation program where we took basically middle-level income people, and we studied the root causes of social injustice in our society. So things like inequity in the way that schools are funded, things like affordable childcare or the lack thereof, things like neighborhoods being redlined by banks so that people couldn't borrow money to buy houses if you lived in a certain zip code. And so Joe joined the program, and I only knew him by email. And my brother had just gone to Jamaica, and he sent me an email and said, "Sis, we got to raise some money for Christmas because I have 180 parishioners. All of them are going to go hungry at Christmas unless you raise money for me to feed them." And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? And so I basically wrote that story or forwarded the email he sent to everybody in my address book. Talk about the pray and spray technique. But we were starting from scratch, you know. Joe sent me a check for $100. And so when the food was delivered, I had my brother send me the pictures, and I sent Joe an envelope with the pictures of 4 families that received his food basket which was really the equivalent of what we call in Jamaica scandal bags. You know those plastic grocery stores that you can't hide any secrets in there? So it was basically the person who's delivering these scandal bags. So he sent me the most heartfelt thank you for giving him that gift of seeing who he helped. And he said, next time your brother comes to town, I want to go to dinner with you guys and meet you. So I said, okay. So he comes to town, and we go to dinner, and as we're pulling into the parking lot, I noticed there's smoke coming out of the hood of my car. I said to my brother, don't worry, we'll deal with it when we come out. We can't keep him waiting. He says, but it could be serious. I said, that's okay, that's what you have insurance for. So I called my ex-husband and said, hey, listen, your car's smoking. I think you need to come and get it. Meanwhile, I went to dinner. So he arrives with my 3 kids in tow, and they're like 5, 3, and 1. And my little one is a holy terror. Don't know where she gets it from, but talk about busy. And so he leaves the 2 younger ones with me, and they are their most miserable, crankiest best. I mean, whining, and it was a total, I thought, oh my God, this is just going the wrong way. So I said, I tell you what, I'll take the kids outside and wait. So my brother emerges sometime later, and I said, well, there goes that gift. He says, no, he's sending me a check tomorrow. So I didn't know he was the father of 5 kids, and he was also divorced, and so he was having a good laugh at my expense. And so the next day, the check arrives, and it was for $500 with a note. Next time Father comes to town, I'd like to take you guys to dinner. So we went to dinner, fairly uneventful the next time, and the check was $1,000, and then $2,500. Well, the 4th time we went to dinner, I said to my brother, hey, listen, you need to tell this guy that we don't want any more of his money until he comes to Jamaica to see the good that his gift is doing every month. He said, sis, are you nuts? We don't have any more donors. I said, it's okay, it's a gut thing. You know, he's like, well, when you have a gut your size, I guess we should listen, you know? Siblings are great, they're humble every day. So the next time he came, we told him that. We said, Joe, we appreciate everything you've done, but we don't want you to give us any more money until you come and see the impact you're having. He came to Jamaica, and on the plane over, he's telling me all the things he's going to teach our people, and I just listened and smiled, because I thought these people are going to school him. And they did. He had never encountered people that were in such humble beginnings, that were so happy and so content with everything they were doing. And so as the week unfolded, we took him to feed the homeless, we took him to repair houses, we took him into the school. And on the way back to Miami, he says to me, Rachel, I thought I was going to Jamaica to teach them how to raise money, but they taught me. And it was so much easier to write a check. That man has been giving us $50,000 a year for the last 12 years, in addition to capital gifts. He has 5 children who have boatloads of student debt because they're all pharmacists and lawyers and doctors. And he says, I am paying them off, they'll make enough money to do it themselves. And he came to me and said, I really want to give you more money. And I said to him, Joe, I can't take any more money. He said, what? I never had anybody turn down money. I said, we don't have the capacity in Jamaica to ensure that if you give us more money, we can account for it and spend it on the things we need. We just don't have any more bandwidth. But I can introduce you to another group that's doing great work just like us. And every year he still comes to us and says, I want to give you more money. This time I told him yes, because we're about to build a preschool for 300 kids. So I said, Joe, I want big money. I said, I want you to give me $200,000 as a matching gift. And so now I have the hard work of raising the matching gift. But that's the kind of story that is possible when you keep donors in the loop with monthly communications. All I did was send Joe a feel-good story every month about a kid that had scored their first A ever in their life, or a student who got accepted into a high-quality high school. Because we reached out personally and kept him abreast, we never ever had to ask him for money. He always came to us saying, do you need more money? All right. So, when we think of how we communicate with folks, there are different channels that we use, and each one has a different audience. So, most of our donors are consuming content in that smallest circle. They're looking at our website, they're looking at our emails, and they're looking at Facebook. The exception to this is if you are an organization that has very young donors, like the March for Our Lives kids, they're awesome, aren't they? They have everything on Instagram and Snapchat. So, you have to think of which social media channels your donors are on, and those are the ones you need to be on. For most of us, that's going to be Facebook. There are other channels that they check us out on. So, for example, if you have a blog, that can be a good way to engage donors. So you could have staff members take turns writing blog posts. So maybe it's profiling one of your social workers one week, or telling a client story the next, or a volunteer story the next, or a donor story. You switch it up, and you have people talk about their why. I heard somebody say that earlier, that what was so powerful was they talked about the why. The more people can share their why, of why they're with your organization, the more donors you're going to attract, and the blog is a great way to do that. There's also some nerdy stuff that you can do behind the scenes with search engine optimization. So that's where if a donor types in, for example, Rachel Ramjetan, well, I'm lucky, there are not too many Rachel Ramjetans there, so you'll probably find a lot of stuff about me, but if you had a name like Susan Smith, or Tom Jones, you're going to be in a crowded deck. So you want to make sure that you're at the top of the list. So there are ways that you can put in keywords in your website that mean when they search for certain phrases, yours are going to rise to the top. So this is not something for amateurs like you and me to do, but your website designer, you need to have a conversation with them and say, what can we do to improve our search engine optimization? Meaning, what keywords can we add to our web pages so when donors search for us, we appear near the top of the list? The third circle is another circle of influence that we don't explore too much. Fundraising. So there's a wonderful book that's written by Hildy Gottlieb, Gottlieb. She's another friend of mine, and she's hilarious. She wrote a book called Fundraising. I forget the subtitle, but it's basically fundraising for boards that hate to raise money but love to make friends. And it's a series of exercises. They're really like cookbook exercises. You literally photocopy the pages and you can take it and do it as an exercise in a board meeting with your board to train them on something that will make them good fundraisers. So one of the exercises I use a lot in board retreats is called Who Do You Know? And the point is that you lead them through this exercise and you ask them, who's your hairdresser, who's your barber, who's your auto insurance person, who's your maid service, who's your dentist, who's your doctor? And once they're finished, they have at least 100 people that they know that they didn't realize they knew and could approach for money. And so that's one way of helping people become more confident. So when we talk about fundraising, what we're talking about in this category is educational things that you can do with your board or even with your volunteers to get them to help you make friends, right? So that's just where that goes. Mobile and photo sharing, Twitter. Twitter, it depends on the generation. If you are with Generation X and lower, Twitter can be a good platform, especially if you're on Generation Z, the younger ones right now. Photo and video sharing is huge because that tends to go viral. People love to share cool photos. So if you have a special event, don't be shy. Friend your donors. I always tell people I don't put anything on Facebook I wouldn't want Jesus to see. Because I'm not really good about covering tracks or anything like that. I always thought it was very easy to live a transparent life because you never have to worry, But friend your donors on Facebook and then share photos and tag them so that when you post them on your nonprofit page, you can send them a link to the photo and say, hey, you're a star. Bet your friends would love to see this. Because the first thing they're going to do is share that content. And every time they share your content, you're going to rise higher through the ranks in Facebook's algorithm where they're serving up your content to people without pay. And then the fourth circle, this is a little bit way too advanced for most of us. Some of the really big nonprofits like Red Cross or Food for the Poor, they will have their own apps, or they'll even have ways that you can use QR codes for an event and do all kinds of stuff. But for the most part, if you don't have the capacity to take on all these different forms of communication, you want to make sure that that first circle is the one that you double down on and make sure you get right. So when you look at people go to your website before they give to you because they want to check you out, go and look at your website on your mobile phone. How does it look? How does your donation page look? Does it look ugly? Is it really mobile friendly? If not, you may need to invest in a refresh on your website and make something that's mobile friendly. Facebook page, absolute must. You must have compelling content there. If you want some examples of great pages to follow, and if you follow Humans of New York on Facebook, how many Humans of New York? All right. For those of you who don't follow Humans of New York, it is a guilty pleasure of mine every day. It was founded by a kid named Brandon. I don't think he's even 30 yet. He wanted to help build a sense of community in a city that's not known for community. And so he, as a photographer, just started taking pictures of random people on the street and asking themselves about their, like, Jessica, tell me about you. And he would write down their quotes word for word, and then he posts the image along with their story. And he has a really cute post called Micro Fashion, which is where he sees his little toddlers and they're all dressed up to the nines. I mean, just really cool content. He goes to different countries and he's now expanded worldwide. The reason you want to look at that is you can learn how to do compelling social media posts just by looking at that. It's always a great quality image, and then he's got enough teaser copy in the picture that you want to click the read more link. You always want to know what's the rest of the story, right? And so I always hit read more. So that's my first stop on Facebook every day. My second one, and this is going to be really hilarious considering I'm not an animal lover, Soy Dog, S-O-I-D-O-G, like the hound. They are a rescue group in Thailand that raises $2 million a month off Facebook ads from American donors, and they don't rescue a single American dog. They don't. They ship dogs to America, and they rescue animals in Thailand. But what's so compelling about them is the images they use and the way they do their stories. So the call to action is always just above the read more link, so that even if you don't take the time to click on read more, you know exactly what they're asking to do. Rescue a dog, volunteer, whatever it is, you know? So when you structure your post that way and you have interesting content with a clear call to action, and you make people smile, laugh, or just feel proud of you, those can be really compelling ways to generate new friends. So as we think about all this communication, if I were you guys, I would be thinking, holy cow, I'm only one person, how are we going to get this done? And so what you have to do is create a repeatable process. And the way that we do this at Network through the Jumpstart program, we will have our templates set up. And so, for example, if you know you're going to send an email blast every week, and the first week is going to be a volunteer story, and the second one is going to be a donor story, and the third one is going to be a success story, and the fourth one is going to be something else. You basically create the templates in advance so that all you have to do every week is drop in new content. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so when you use tools and technology to communicate with your donors, it makes the process a lot easier. Yes,
I was wondering if, when they send out the email on this, could someone send that particular slide to us?
Which one?
That one.
Oh, that one. You're going to get the whole presentation.
Oh, all right.
I think, Kim, yeah.
Thank you.
It's big, so if you need me to give you a link to download it, I can. So Kim and I will work that out.
Thank you.
So here's an example of a small organization. They joined the Jumpstart program, and they had an executive director and also a development director. The development director quit about a third of the way through the program, but they were still able to be very successful in upgrading donors and raising more revenue because we automated so much of the communications that go with it. And so in just 1 year, they raised $48,000 from 117 new donors. And when we use the word net new, we know that we're going to lose donors every year. You know, you might lose 20% of your donors even if you're awesome at donor retention strategies. So if you had 100 donors and you lose 20, you're down to 80. So when we say 117, that means they acquired 37 new donors, right? So we're looking at the year-over-year donor base. How are we able to do that? The technology can help you. It doesn't matter whether you're using Network for Good, or you're using eTapestry, or Boomerang, or Neon, or Little Green Light. As long as you're having a database that allows you to segment your audience and create personal communications to them, you're going to win. So it's not about the tools. It's really about being able to speak to that donor as if they're the only person in your world. The reason Joe and Ray gave us so much money is because we treated them as if they're our only donors. Every time Father came, we went to dinner with them. And I have to tell you the truth, I'm a solid independent voter. And Ray is a staunch Republican and his wife is a staunch Democrat. So you can imagine the fun topics we had over dinner conversations. And he told me that he had met Donald Trump one day, and I said, is he in real life like he's portrayed on TV? He says, yeah, worse. And so we talked about it, and he had bought a hotel from him. And long story short, I was teasing him, and I said to him, well, boy, you better have invested in Trump's campaign. He said, yes, but I invested in Hillary's too. You know, you gotta hedge your bets. That is all about donor segmentation, right? Because I knew what his persuasion was. We could have a conversation about that. Obviously, we wouldn't talk politics in email because it's the quickest way to turn people off. But when you can know that that's something that he's passionate about and find a way to include that in the conversation, that's when you score those hits. And segmentation is how you do it. In Network for Good, we do it two ways. We have groups, and then we also have what we call filters. So if, for example, you have a gala every year, you could create a group of gala attendees so that when it comes time to sell tickets, instead of bombarding your whole list with invitations to this gala, you only target the people that you know are interested in that gala. You know, so that's what we're talking about when we say personalized. All right, another cool thing. People love interaction, right? And they love to give feedback. So you want to create ways for them to engage with you. Maybe it is that you give them a donor survey, or maybe you ask them to sit on an advisory council, or maybe you ask them to come volunteer. But the more you get them engaging with you and physically doing stuff, the more valuable they're going to be in terms of the dollars they give. You also want to give them reasons to come back. So by providing them content that's relevant to them and is interesting to them, you're going to keep them coming back. That's why I go to Humans of New York and Soy Dog every single day. So when you're thinking, switch it up and say, if I wanted to engage somebody and keep them talking to me, what kind of things would I share with them? Donors love to laugh, just like me and you. So when you can make fun of yourself and make it all about you, you know, fun and poking fun, having a good time, they're going to like that. We had one of my coaching clients was a group that provides inclusion activities for people with disabilities. So they pair each person with a disability with a sports team, a collegiate sports team, and they're their buddies. And for the whole year, they're part of the team. They go on every trip with the team. They sit on the sidelines with the team, and they figure out what can they do. And it was funded by a guy named Michael Plansky, whose son has cerebral palsy. And Max wanted to learn to be a statistician for basketball. And so they made him an assistant statistician. And he can't write. He has no movement with his hands, but he's there and he has a good time. So the reason people keep coming back is because they love that story of triumph and resilience. The reason Joe came back to us is because he loves knowing that every day he's taking a kid out of poverty because he's providing the infrastructure to build a quality school. All right, step 12. You want to identify those people that are what we call mid-level donor prospects or major donor prospects. So mid-level donor is somebody who gives you probably between $500 and $1,500 a year, somewhere in that range. Mid-range donors usually are monthly donors. A lot of them are, but they could be just casual donors. And the reason that you want to double down on this group is you know they have the capacity to give more because they're already giving you at a fairly high level. And with just a little bit of TLC, you can build a relationship with them that's going to take them to that major gifts level. So remember what we said, 80% of the gifts are contributed by 20% of your donors. This is what we're talking about. We not only have to know about who are our VIPs or our top 20% now, we also need to be prospecting to see who can we add to that list, right? The more you cultivate them, the more you get them involved in your work, the more money they're going to give. So that first old curmudgeon donor that told me kids need to have more fun, not more instruction, I had to tap into what did he feel and why did he feel that way. And then once he started funding the program, I went back to him with a report and he said, oh my God, I can't believe somebody actually listened to me. And I looked dead smack at his wife. We have a fantastic relationship, but if we are able to help them make those connections and we're able to find more people like them, major gifts is where the money's at. Because 80% of your funding comes from that. But it takes 18 to 24 months to cultivate a major gift. So that's a long time. And so this is the forgotten segment of our database because we are being held accountable for numbers now. And so when you're looking at the statistics that you're using or the metrics you're using to measure your fundraising success, you need to look beyond the dollars and the number of donors and start setting some goals for how many major gift prospects are you going to identify this year? How many major gifts are you going to win? How many phone calls or advice visits are you going to do? So there are lots of intangible things that we know can lead to major gifts, and you need to be doing those and tracking those as well so that you can bring in the big money. So if you want to think about your donor base as a funnel, much like sales, most of our prospects will come in through Facebook. Somebody shared something on social media about volunteering with us, or if they came to an event, or maybe they saw a story in the news media. But you need to keep that top of your funnel full of new prospects. And then you got to get them to commit to you. Usually they'll commit on a small basis. Donors rarely give a major gift at first sight. So Joe's first gift was $500. That was a huge gift to us, the biggest one we'd ever had. But to him it was pocket change. And he's now a $50,000 a year donor and has been for a long time. But he didn't come in at the monthly level. He came as a prospect when I first sent out that email and quickly moved straight to major gifts. So some of them will move fast, some will move slow, some will give you a major gift at first sight. So I don't want you to think of this as a sequential process because it's not. I just want you to take away the idea that if you want to raise big money for your organization, the real money is at the bottom of the funnel, and that's what you have to develop. The really, really, really big money is in endowments or planned gifts. Many of us, especially with smaller nonprofits, we don't have the bandwidth to take on something like this because we don't have staff, and planned gifts take a long time to cultivate. But there are services that you can use that can help you in the process. So there's a company called Stelter, and for about $3,000 or $4,000 a year, they'll create a custom planned gift site that's branded with your organization, and they'll set up an email trigger that anybody who downloads a guide to retirement planning or whatever it is, you get an email to say, hey, they downloaded this, you need to go talk to this person. So there are ways you can do it, and you may not be ready for this yet, but planned gifts come at the very end. So if you have an established donor base and you have lots of major gifts donors in your database, then you might be ready to look at planned giving. If you don't, it's time to start building that base from scratch so that in a few years' time you can start working on the planned giving. Woo, now it's time for the Achilles heel. We can't do this alone. How are we going to get our boss or our board on board? And this is where we are going to do a quick exercise. And in the packets that you have, there is on the very back, there's a thing called a give and get policy. So how many of you have boards that contribute, 100% of your board members make a financial gift to your organization? Woo-hoo! Oh, wow, that's pretty good. Okay, well done. How many of you have board members that got a few of those. So one of the best ways that you can increase giving is to convince your board that they need to give money financially as well as in kind, and it's for two reasons. The first is whenever you write a grant application, there's a favorite question they like to ask. What percentage of your board contributes financially to your organization? If your answer is less than 100%, you lose points on your grant application. Because the way funders look at it is, if your board that knows the good, bad, and ugly about you won't give you their money and trust you with their money, how can we? And so when you start to show board members that this is how grant makers look at it, and we could win more grants if we had 100% participation, doesn't matter if they're giving you $1 or $1 million, as long as they're all giving money, you're gonna be able to sell them on that. The second thing is, when board members are giving you their money, they have a stake in the organization and they have more credibility when they go out into the community to help you make friends. If somebody came to you and said, Jessica, I want you to invest in this organization, and you say, okay, why? And you tell her why? Well, do you give financially? No, it's just you're going to say yes. Wait, you don't give and you're asking me to give? That doesn't make sense. And so the best way that I know to get board members to give is to pass something that we call the give and get policy. You have an example of it on the back. It's basically something that you do every year with them, and they renew their commitment every year, and it's an understanding that they will either contribute or get somebody else to contribute a certain amount of money each year, and you can choose to have a give and a get, or a give or get. I also like the idea of not calling it a give or get, because it sounds very punitive and a stick approach, like do this, don't do this, I'm going to fire you from my board. I like to use the words count me in. This is our count me in policy, because words matter, and you're framing it as, what can we as an organization count on you to do, Rob, to keep us going, right? And it's not just about the money, it's about board meeting attendance and which committees they're going to serve on and things like that. So that's an example of a very simple policy. And what I want to do now, and this is going to be a noisy exercise, but it's going to be a lot of fun, is I want to ask each of you to divide into pairs. One of you is going to play the role of the grumpy board member that doesn't think they should have to fundraise or contribute financially and raise all kinds of objections. And the other one is going to be the poor executive director that has to help them see the light. And so I'm going to give you 10 minutes for the conversation, and if you want, you can even switch roles. But when we're done, I want us to talk about some of the objections that the grumpy board members raised of why they don't contribute financially or don't think they should have to, and then how some of you as executive directors helped your grumpy board member to overcome that. Sounds like fun? Okay, so let's go all the way